Good morning, Video Waves. How do you like to spend your snow days? If I had to guess, it'd be staying inside with the heat on high. That's definitely what Texas residents plan to do during the record-breaking snowstorms in February 2021. Unfortunately, they couldn't. The state's power grid had failed, leaving millions of homes and businesses without power. How could this have happened, and can it happen again? I interviewed an energy industry employee 1 year later to get some behind-the-scenes info on this terrifying tragedy. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you give us an introduction and some information on what your job entails?
Sure thing. Thank you for having me here, April. My name's Alex Wimmer. I've been in the retail energy side of the business for about 25 years. And currently I manage a team of analysts. We provide billing services for retail electric companies.
So the Texas power crisis must have been very busy for you.
Yes, it was. Several of our clients had a pretty significant customer base in Texas when the storm hit.
Before the storm, there were rumors of this happening. Did your Texan clients take any precautions, or was their business as usual?
They took some precautions, but there was a limit to what they could do. What they really tried to focus on doing was make sure that they had enough energy procured ahead of time to cover their customers during the duration of the storm.
So naturally, there was a price spike for energy users. How did that compare from the billing of previous years?
Well, the best way to do is give you a little bit of a comparison. If you had a fair-sized commercial customer, before the storm, they might have been paying $2 for energy for a typical hour. Mid-storm, well, actually, when the storm hit, it might have been up to about $45, and then when at its peak, it was close to $600.
And how long did this spike in pricing last?
It lasted for a good week, for a good duration of the storm. Yeah.
So because of the lack of electricity, did you see any spike in demand for natural gases and solar energy? And were there any complications with that?
The challenges we had during the storm was Texas power plants were geared more towards weather extremes, towards heat. They had not been built with the idea of how do we keep our elements warm, because you're in Texas. They don't expect to get freezing cold temperatures over most of Texas, right? And Texas is a very large state. There's some areas that were fairly well protected, but most of the generating plants were not built to withstand extreme cold temperatures. So that's where we ran into problems. You had a lot of the generating plants, natural gas, had elements that froze. Solar plants really don't work very well during a storm. There's no sun. Even some of the windmills had some issues with freezing, and once they stopped turning, they stopped generating the power.
Have there been any long-lasting effects on the freeze of your Texas clients?
Yes, there have been. The clients did a pretty good job of protecting themselves, making sure they had the energy procured ahead of time. Some of their customers were on what we call market-based pricing, which means they're paying market rates. And so when those rates really screamed, they had to pay a lot of money. So we have seen a significant increase in bankruptcies in ERCOT from some of those commercial customers. The other factor is, a lot of these customers lost power for a significant period of time. And yet the utilities still sent them a bill saying, hey, you used power during this time. So there was a lot of back and forth while the utilities figured out, okay, who used what power when, and then had to fix those bills and make sure that they had accuracy. And that lasted a couple months.
So now because of this, were there any significant concerns because of this winter, and were there any extra precautions taken?
I could tell you that a lot of those customers that were on market-based rates made sure that they procured their energy and had a fixed rate during that time so that they wouldn't have to pay those market spikes if there was any kind of a storm that would hit. I do know that some of the generating companies have begun work on trying to protect plants against these type of extreme colds, but it just hasn't been enough time for them to truly winterize. And unfortunately, that kind of a storm is a very rare event, so we didn't get hit with another one this year, which is good.
And during your years in the energy industry, have you ever experienced something like this chaotic?
Yes. Right. Here in the Northeast, back in 2015, we had what we call the polar vortex. It was a similar deal. In January, late January, the temperatures plummeted, froze up a number of key elements on a number of natural gas power plants, and shut them down. And so they had to ramp up a bunch of power plants that were offline during this time of year, bring them up to speed, and prices really spiked.
All right, so that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for joining us and giving us a sneak peek into the Texas power crisis. Thank you. That's all we have for today. Video Waves, NCC Media Lab, signing off.